Arkham Asylum has locked away insane serial killers, plant monsters, and creatures strong enough to tear the building apart. Some inmates escaped within hours, others took control of the entire institution, and one patient was the man who created it. So today, I'm explaining every major Arkham inmate, why they were committed, and what happened once the doors closed, starting with Arkham's founder, before ending with the one inmate nobody expects, Amadeus Arkham. Before Arkham Asylum became a revolving door for Gotham's supervillains, it was the dream of one doctor who genuinely believed he could build something better. Amadeus Arkham grew up around mental illness. His mother, Elizabeth, suffered from severe delusions and spent years confined inside the family home. Amadeus eventually ended her life, though he convinced himself he had merely helped her die peacefully. That buried act became the first secret beneath the institution that would later carry her name, the Elizabeth Arkham Asylum for the Criminally Insane. Amadeus left Gotham, trained as a psychiatrist, and built a life with his wife, Constance, and their daughter. Then a patient named Martin Hawkins destroyed it. Hawkins, a serial killer known as Mad Dog, escaped custody and murdered Amadeus's family inside their home. By the time Amadeus returned, the building he intended to convert into a hospital had become a crime scene. He opened the asylum anyway. Hawkins was eventually captured and delivered into Amadeus's care, which was an absolutely insane conflict of interest even by Gotham standards. Amadeus treated him for months while pretending he wanted rehabilitation. Then, during an electroshock session, he deliberately killed Hawkins and disguised the murder as an accident. From that point forward, Arkham was already compromised. Its founder had used treatment as execution, hidden the truth, and continued running the hospital as his own mind deteriorated. Amadeus began seeing visions, hearing voices, and carving strange symbols into the floors. Whether the house was literally haunted depends on the story. His collapse does not. The staff eventually realized that the director needed to become a patient. Amadeus was confined inside the asylum he created and remained there until his death. That is Arkham's foundation. The first major inmate was not a clown, a monster, or a costumed criminal. It was the doctor holding the keys, Joker. Most prisoners want to escape Arkham. Joker has always had a more disturbing relationship with the place because sometimes he seems to enjoy being there. Arkham gives him an audience. It gives him doctors to manipulate, guards to humiliate and frighten patients who already know his reputation. He can turn a therapy session into an origin story, change the details when the next doctor arrives, and watch educated people argue over whether any of it was true. His identity is not a puzzle he wants solved. The puzzle is the weapon. That is exactly what happened to Harleen Quinzel, but Joker's control over Arkham has gone much further than seducing one psychiatrist. In Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious Earth, the inmates seize the entire building and hold the staff hostage. Their demand is simple. Batman must come inside. Joker is not trying to flee. He wants Batman trapped in the same corridors, surrounded by the people he keeps sending back there. Once Batman enters, Joker guides him through the building like a host welcoming an old friend home. The point is psychological. Arkham is supposed to separate Batman from his enemies, yet Joker keeps suggesting that the building has simply collected different expressions of the same obsession. He has hijacked the asylum in other stories, poisoned its staff, recruited patients, and escaped so many times that another breakout barely surprises Gotham anymore. During Death of the Family, he returns to Arkham and behaves as though he owns it. He moves through locked wards, pulls other villains into his performance, and forces Riddler to demonstrate that his cell was never truly holding him. Why has treatment failed so completely? Part of the answer is that Joker refuses to maintain one stable self long enough to treat. His history and motives change, while even his apparent mental state can shift depending on what will frighten the person examining him. Some stories suggest he continuously reinvents himself in response to the world around him. Others leave the question open because a definite diagnosis would make him smaller, and Arkham cannot tolerate uncertainty. A hospital needs records, categories, and treatment plans. Joker turns every category into another joke. He may be the asylum's most famous resident, but he is not simply its strongest or most intelligent. His real advantage is that Arkham means something to everyone except him. To the doctors, it is a workplace. To Batman, it is a responsibility. And to all the patients, it's a cage. To Joker, it is a stage with doors that occasionally close. Two-Face. Harvey Dent once stood on the opposite side of Arkham's locked doors. He was Gotham's district attorney, a public ally of Batman and one of the people responsible for deciding where criminals would be sent. Then acid scarred half his face. Years of buried trauma surged to the surface, and Harvey began surrendering his decisions to a damaged coin. One side is clean and the other is scarred. When the coin lands, Harvey treats the result as law. That makes Two-Face dangerous, but it also makes him unusually vulnerable inside Arkham. Other inmates can manipulate the toss, steal the coin, or pressure him into decisions while he is unable to act. In Arkham Asylum, living hell, Warren White briefly becomes Harvey's servant, carrying the coin and waiting for the result. When White needs protection from another inmate, Harvey does not ask what is right. He flips. The wrong side comes up, and Harvey refuses to help. The institution has repeatedly tried to break his dependence on binary choices. In a serious house on Sirius Earth, doctors replace his coin with a 6-sided die, then plan to move him toward cards with dozens of possible outcomes. It sounds like progress. Instead, the flood of choices leaves Harvey unable to perform basic actions. By attempting to remove the coin too quickly, the treatment strips away the crude system he was using to function. That is the problem Arkham keeps facing with him. The coin is part weapon, part ritual, and part coping mechanism. Taking it away does not automatically restore Harvey Dent. Giving it back does not absolve him of the murders he commits after a bad toss. Batman continues searching for Harvey because he remembers the man beneath the scar. He has funded surgery, defended his capacity to recover, and trusted him with responsibility more than once. Some of those attempts work for a while. Then a new betrayal, injury, or moment of pressure drags Two-Face back. Arkham can lock up Harvey's body and confiscate the coin. What it has never managed to do for long is convince him that he can make a choice and live with it himself. Riddler. Edward Nygma has designed crimes that Batman might never have solved if Edward had been capable of keeping his mouth shut. He cannot. Riddler needs Batman to know there is a puzzle. He needs the police to see that the answer was sitting in front of them. Most importantly, he needs everyone to understand that Edward was the smartest person in the room. That compulsion is why a man with genius-level intelligence keeps leaving the exact clues required to send him back to Arkham. Inside the asylum, Riddler is often calmer than the patients around him. He can speak clearly, analyze behavior, and appear perfectly capable of understanding reality. The problem appears when his superiority is challenged. A riddle is no longer entertainment at that point. It becomes proof that he matters. Modern stories have shown how catastrophic that need can become. During Zero Year, Riddler takes control of Gotham, floods large sections of the city, and forces the survivors into a daily contest of intelligence. He does not merely want money or escape. He wants an entire city arranged around the belief that nobody can defeat him. Batman eventually does, and Edward ends up where Gotham places the enemies it considers too unstable for Blackgate. His time in Arkham creates another question. Is the cell really holding him? Or is his own need for recognition doing most of the work? Joker tests that during Death of the Family. He enters Riddler's cell and reveals that he knows Edward could have escaped. Then he forces him to prove it. Riddler opens the cell, but the victory immediately becomes humiliating because he has performed on Joker's command. He was free the entire time and still allowed another man to control the moment. Arkham can give Edward medication, therapy, and endless puzzles. None of those things remove the audience he craves because Batman remains outside solving cases while Gotham keeps producing mysteries. Every time Edward believes he has designed the perfect test, he talks himself back into the contest. And eventually, that contest leads him through the same front doors again. Scarecrow. Arkham is already full of people experiencing paranoia, hallucinations, and extreme fear. Jonathan Crane walks into that environment carrying chemicals designed to make every one of those symptoms worse. Crane built his life around studying fear. Depending on the continuity, he was a psychologist, professor, or researcher whose experiments crossed every ethical line long before he became Scarecrow. He does not simply want people frightened. He wants to observe the exact second fear takes control, record the response, and push the subject further. That makes Arkham both his prison and his perfect laboratory. The building gives him vulnerable subjects, medical supplies, and staff who may underestimate a thin man without his costume. Once fear toxin reaches the ventilation system, physical security becomes almost irrelevant. Guards see monsters in empty corridors while patients turn on each other. Doctors cannot tell whether the threat in front of them is real, and Crane can walk through the panic while everyone else fights their own mind. He has orchestrated breakouts from inside and used the asylum to attack Batman's deepest doubts. In Kings of Fear, Scarecrow turns an Arkham riot into a larger psychological experiment, forcing Batman to confront the possibility that his entire mission has made Gotham worse. Crane understands that Batman's courage is not an absence of fear. It is the decision to act while experiencing more of it than most people could tolerate. During Forever Evil, with Batman and the Justice League apparently gone, Scarecrow becomes one of the leaders of the Arkham inmates. The patients divide Gotham among themselves and go to war with Bane's army from Blackgate. For once, Arkham is no longer a building containing villains. It is a political faction, and Crane is organizing it. That is a huge jump from spraying one victim with toxin, but it follows the same principle. He identifies what people fear, then offers himself as the person who understands it. Arkham has tried to treat Jonathan Crane many times. The problem is that he often knows the language of treatment as well as the people examining him. He can describe trauma, measure symptoms, and predict how a doctor expects a patient to behave. Then someone opens the wrong container, and the entire ward remembers why he was locked away: Harley Quinn. Harleen Quinzel did not arrive at Arkham in handcuffs. She arrived with credentials. She was a young psychiatrist assigned to interview Joker, and she believed she could understand him. Joker recognized the opportunity immediately. Across their sessions, he fed her stories designed to create sympathy, adjusted his vulnerability to match what she wanted to hear, and slowly transformed the relationship between doctor and patient into an obsession. Harleen began helping him. She smuggled items through security, enabled escapes, and eventually created the Harley Quinn identity. The doctor who entered Arkham to study one of its most dangerous inmates became his accomplice, then returned to the same institution as a patient herself. That reversal is one of Arkham's clearest failures. The hospital did not protect its employee from manipulation. It did not recognize the boundary violations early enough, and once Harleen crossed the line, Arkham placed her in the same ecosystem as the man who had exploited her. For years, Harley treated devotion to Joker as the center of her identity. She endured abuse, rationalized betrayal, and returned whenever he offered just enough affection to restart the cycle. Arkham could separate them physically, but a locked door did not undo the story Harleen had built around their relationship. Her later history matters because she eventually does leave him. Harley forms friendships outside Joker, works with the Suicide Squad, becomes part of the Gotham City Sirens, and sometimes acts as an anti-hero. She remains unpredictable and frequently violent, but she is no longer automatically his assistant in every story. That growth also changes what Arkham represents for her. It is the place where her professional life ended, where her criminal identity began, and where authorities keep trying to force her back into a version of herself she has already outgrown. Harley first appeared in Batman, the animated series, before entering DC's comic continuity, and different versions handle her training and transformation differently. The central irony survives all of them. Arkham assigned Harleen Quinzel to determine whether Joker could be treated. Joker left the sessions with a new escape route, and Arkham gained another inmate: Poison Ivy. Putting Poison Ivy in a normal cell is like trying to imprison a wildfire inside a greenhouse. Pamela Isley can control plants, produce toxins, and influence human bodies through spores, pheromones, and chemical compounds. Her exact origin has changed, but most versions begin with a brilliant botanist betrayed or transformed through experiments involving plant toxins. Over time, her connection to the green makes her less like a conventional criminal and more like an avatar of the natural world. Arkham is built for human patience. Ivy can use the weeds outside the walls, roots beneath the foundation, and flowers brought by a careless visitor. A ventilation system becomes a delivery mechanism. A guard approaching her cell may already be breathing whatever she released minutes earlier. Her motives complicate treatment even further. Ivy genuinely cares about the environment and has protected innocent people, especially children, on multiple occasions. She has also killed, controlled minds, and treated human life as expendable when it threatens the plants she values. Arkham cannot dismiss everything she believes as delusion because Gotham's corporations really do poison the land. The danger comes from how far she is willing to go in response. During breakouts, Ivy often stops behaving like an escaped patient and begins claiming territory. She transforms buildings, seals streets with vegetation, and creates zones where armed police cannot move. In Arkham War, she becomes one of the major powers on the Arkham side, capable of challenging forces that would flatten most inmates. Her relationship with Harley also reveals a side Arkham's files rarely capture. Ivy can be protective, loyal, and capable of connection. The bodies left behind by her eco-terrorism remain part of the record, while that capacity for connection makes the idea of simply storing her in a concrete room feel even more inadequate. Arkham can trim every leaf in Pamela's cell. It can filter the air and keep guards behind glass. None of that changes the fact that the building sits on soil. Mr. Freeze. Victor Freeze is one of the clearest examples of Arkham being used because Gotham has nowhere else equipped to hold the prisoner. Victor was a cryogenics expert trying to save his terminally ill wife, Nora. An industrial accident altered his body until he could survive only at sub-zero temperatures. From that point forward, he needed a refrigerated suit to move through the world, and his research became a criminal obsession funded through theft, extortion, and murder. The tragedy and the damage he causes are both real. Arkham has to build specialized refrigerated cells around him. If the cooling system fails, Victor can die. If the security system fails, he has access to technology capable of freezing guards, shattering steel, and turning entire corridors into ice. Treating him is inseparable from maintaining the machinery that keeps him alive. Living Hell shows exactly how dangerous that environment can become for someone else. Warren White is locked in Freeze's cell as punishment. Victor has been moved, but the temperature remains brutally low. By the time Warren is found, frostbite has destroyed parts of his face and body. Arkham's attempt to contain one unusual patient physically transforms another. Freeze does not always belong in psychiatric custody. Some stories treat him as a rational criminal making deliberate choices, which would place him closer to Blackgate. Others emphasize the obsessive grief and emotional detachment that make Arkham's medical facilities seem appropriate. Gotham shifts him between categories because neither institution can solve the actual problem. Nora remains the center of his justification. Victor tells himself every robbery serves the cure and every victim is a necessary cost. Batman understands the grief, but he refuses to accept the equation. Arkham can keep Victor cold. It cannot make time stop for Nora, and it cannot convince him to let her go. Killer Croc. Waylon Jones has spent most of his life being treated like a monster, and Arkham often continues the pattern. He was born with a condition that gave him reptilian features and increasingly durable skin. Some versions present him as a powerful wrestler and criminal with a human mind behind the scales. Others push the mutation further until he becomes enormous, cannibalistic, and barely able to communicate. That difference matters because there is no single Killer Croc profile that fits every era. What remains consistent is the abuse. Waylon is mocked, exploited, and displayed as something less than human. He learns that strength is the only quality people respect, then uses that strength to terrorize anyone who comes near him. Arkham responds with reinforced cells, restraints, and isolation. In several versions, Croc is kept beneath the main institution or near the sewer system because ordinary wards cannot hold him. The arrangement makes practical sense and still reinforces every belief that drove him there. Doctors say they are treating a man while housing him like an animal underground. Croc can tear through guards during a riot, survive injuries that would stop most villains, and move through Gotham's tunnels without being seen. Yet he has also protected vulnerable people, formed unlikely friendships, and shown more empathy than the supposedly civilized criminals around him. Those moments are not a cure. They are proof that the monster label was never the whole story. When Bane frees Arkham during Nightfall, Croc becomes one of the most physically exhausting opponents Batman must face. Their battle drains what little strength Bruce has left, exactly as Bane intended, and helps deliver him to the man who will break his back. Arkham sees scales, teeth, and a containment problem. Batman keeps searching for Waylon Jones underneath. Sometimes he finds him. Sometimes Croc has already decided the world only deserves the monster it created. Clayface. Arkham performs head counts. Clayface can become the person doing the counting. Several criminals have used the name, and their histories cannot be cleanly merged. Matt Hagen gained shape-shifting powers through a strange substance. Preston Payne's unstable body forced him to drain others. Sandra Fuller became Lady Clay. Modern Batman stories usually place Basil Karlo at the center, an actor whose obsession with roles eventually becomes the ability to reshape his entire body. Basil can copy a face, voice, fingerprints, and clothing. In some stories, he can split mass away from himself, survive devastating impacts, and become a towering creature of living clay. That makes a conventional cell almost pointless. A guard entering the room may be Clayface. A patient leaving the infirmary may be Clayface. The lump of material stuck beneath a trolley may also be Clayface. Arkham's greatest weakness is human routine, and Basil can imitate every person involved in that routine. His acting background makes the power more than camouflage. Basil loses himself in roles. He can become someone so completely that identity itself starts feeling temporary. Treatment has to answer a question no ordinary hospital faces. How do you stabilize a patient who can physically rewrite the face in the mirror? Later stories allow Basil to attempt genuine reform. Batman recruits him. The Bat family trains beside him, and he uses his abilities to save people. Those periods prove he is capable of more than impersonation and murder. They also make each relapse more painful because Arkham is no longer holding an unknowable monster. It is holding someone who came close to building another life. Any complete account has to keep the Clayfaces separate, but Arkham's problem is consistent across all of them. The institution is designed to know who occupies each cell. Clayface turns that basic fact into a guess. Mad Hatter. Jervis Tetch looks less physically threatening than almost anyone in Arkham. That impression lasts until you realize the guard unlocking his door may no longer be acting voluntarily. Tetch is obsessed with Alice's adventures in Wonderland. He builds crimes around tea parties, rabbits, queens, and young women he forces into the role of Alice. His mind control technology allows him to override decisions through specialized hats, cards, and implanted devices. Inside Arkham, that power is a security nightmare. A prison depends on instructions traveling down a chain of command. Tetch can hijack the chain, a doctor may alter his treatment plan, a guard may smuggle in equipment, and another inmate may attack Batman without knowing why. His harmless presentation becomes part of the trap. Jervis speaks softly, hides behind fantasy, and treats his victims as characters in a story he controls. The Wonderland language sounds whimsical until a real person tries to leave the role he assigned them. Arkham has confiscated his hats, searched his cell, and isolated him from electronics. He continues finding ways to turn tiny pieces of technology into control systems. During mass breakouts such as Nightfall, Batman cannot simply catch him. He has to identify everyone Jervis has compromised along the way. The Silver Age also featured an imposter Mad Hatter, so the histories are not perfectly interchangeable. The Arkham regular is Jervis Tetch, the man who does not want to visit Wonderland alone. He wants everyone inside, and he wants to decide what part they play: ventriloquist and Scarface. Arnold Wesker is a timid older man who can barely raise his voice. Scarface is a wooden gangster who orders murders, runs rackets, and insults anyone close enough to hear him. The obvious explanation is that Arnold speaks for both of them. Arkham's problem is that Arnold does not experience it that way. Wesker treats Scarface as a separate person. The dummy makes decisions Arnold claims to oppose, and Arnold obeys with the terrified loyalty of a subordinate. Scarface even mispronounces words because his wooden mouth cannot form certain sounds, a detail Arnold maintains while supposedly improvising both sides of the conversation. Some stories hint that the dummy may carry a supernatural influence. Most keep the relationship psychological and deliberately unsettling. Arkham cannot prove a block of wood is alive, but simply taking it away does not solve Arnold's dependence. He can build another dummy, transfer the voice, or collapse without the identity that had been carrying his aggression. Inside the asylum, Scarface allows Arnold to participate in criminal hierarchies without appearing threatening. Other inmates negotiate with the dummy. Guards focus on the puppet and overlook the man moving it. During Living Hell, Warren White encounters a social order where Scarface has more authority than many human patients. Later characters, including Peyton Riley, also become the ventriloquist. Their histories should not be folded into Arnold's. His tragedy is specific. Wesker can be gentle, frightened, and genuinely remorseful, while Scarface directs terrible violence through the same hands. Destroying the dummy has never been enough. Arkham can lock Scarface in evidence storage and Arnold in a cell on the opposite side of the building. Sooner or later, one of them starts talking again. Victor Zash. Victor Zash does not need a costume, a chemical weapon, or an army. Give him an unlocked door and one unprotected person, and he has everything he wants. Zash was once a wealthy Gotham businessman. After losing his parents, he gambled away his fortune and decided that human life was meaningless. He began murdering strangers, cutting one tally mark into his own skin for every victim. The scars covering his body are not decoration, they are his record. His most important Arkham story unfolds in the last Arkham. A new administrator claims his methods can reform Gotham's worst offenders, yet murders matching Zash's pattern continue while Victor is supposedly secured inside. Batman has himself committed under a false identity to investigate from within, and discovers Zash using a hidden passage to leave his cell. That detail captures the threat perfectly. Zash is patient enough to appear contained. He can follow routines, study staff, and wait until the institution begins trusting its own paperwork. By the time Arkham realizes the count is wrong, another person is dead. He has no superhuman durability. Batman can defeat him in seconds during a fair fight. Zash builds every crime around preventing that fair fight from happening. He targets sleeping victims, isolated civilians, and anyone who mistakes his calm voice for control. Arkham can restrain his hands, search his room, and assign constant observation. It cannot afford one lazy shift. Victor only needs a single failure, and the institution has never managed to remain perfect for long. Calendar Man. Julian Day commits crimes according to holidays, anniversaries, and significant dates. That sounds like a gimmick, until Batman needs information only Julian can provide. In The Long Halloween, Calendar Man sits inside a glass-fronted Arkham cell while Batman and Commissioner Gordon investigate a killer striking on holidays. Julian understands the pattern and becomes their imprisoned consultant. Every visit gives him the pleasure of knowing that Batman has come to him for help. His power is leverage. A date means nothing until Julian attaches a ritual to it, and then the whole city begins anticipating midnight. He can use Christmas, Independence Day, or a victim's birthday to create dread weeks before the crime. Even when he is locked away, Gotham has to wonder whether a coming holiday belongs to him. Different eras have made Calendar Man theatrical, grotesque, or surprisingly sophisticated. Some versions change his costume with the seasons. Others turn him into a scarred serial killer who treats the calendar as a sacred schedule. The common element is preparation. Julian wants the crime and its timing to feel inevitable. Arkham gives him an audience, access to news, and an endless supply of future dates. Removing one calendar would achieve nothing because he already knows what tomorrow means. Maxi Zeus. Maxi Zeus does not merely admire Greek mythology. He believes he is Zeus, ruler of Olympus, and interprets Arkham as another kingdom waiting to recognize him. Born Maximilian Zeus, he was a history teacher before crime and obsession consumed his identity. He surrounds himself with symbols of ancient Greece, recruits followers under mythological names, and frames ordinary violence as divine punishment. Depending on the era, he also uses advanced weapons disguised as thunderbolts, giving his claims a spectacular edge. Inside Arkham, Maxi's danger comes from certainty. He does not ask other inmates to join a gang. He offers them a place in a cosmic order where every humiliation has meaning and every enemy deserves judgment. In a building full of damaged identities, that promise can attract followers quickly. Stories have shown him taking influence over entire wards and treating doctors as priests, traitors, or lesser gods. Arkham staff can challenge the facts of his delusion, but Maxi converts resistance into further evidence that mortals are defying Olympus. His claims do not make him divine. Batman has beaten him repeatedly, and much of his apparent power depends on machinery or loyal criminals. Yet a locked ward can become his throne room if enough people accept the performance. That is Arkham's recurring mistake. Assuming a man has no authority because the title he uses is impossible. Firefly. Most prisons fear escape. When Firefly enters Arkham, the building also has to fear being burned to the ground. The best-known Firefly is Garfield Linz, a former special effects expert and pyromaniac who builds a flight suit equipped with flamethrowers and incendiary weapons. Earlier stories presented him as a criminal who created illusions with colored lights, while later continuity transformed him into the airborne arsonist Batman usually fights today. Linz does not see fire as ordinary destruction. He is fascinated by its color, motion, and ability to erase whatever existed before it. That obsession makes treatment difficult, because every alarm, electrical fault, and emergency evacuation can become stimulation. During nightfall, Bane releases Arkham's inmates to exhaust Batman. Firefly immediately turns Gotham into fuel, attacking sites connected to the childhood he wants to erase. His crimes force Batman to chase flames rather than a man, spending energy rescuing civilians while Linz moves to the next target. Arkham can remove his suit, but the institution itself contains kitchens, wiring, oxygen systems, chemicals, and locked rooms packed with people. One improvised spark can cause panic long before Firefly reaches his full equipment. Physically, he is nowhere near Croc or Clayface. In the wrong corridor, however, strength stops mattering. How hard can Batman punch while smoke is filling a ward and every door needs a key? Black Mask. Roman Sionis grew up inside Gotham's wealth and learned to despise the polite faces worn by its elite. He eventually carved a black mask, built the False Face Society, and turned that hatred into organized crime. Unlike many Arkham inmates, Roman usually wants power that functions outside the institution. He controls money, territory, weapons, and people. The mask is not a retreat from reality. It is the identity under which he believes he can dominate it. His methods are vicious, even by Gotham standards. Torture is part of his management style. Fear keeps his organization obedient, and personal humiliation can provoke enormous retaliation. He has targeted Batman's allies, battled other crime bosses, and treated suffering as proof that he remains in control. Arkham appearances place a criminal executive among inmates who do not respect corporate hierarchy. Roman can recruit them, buy staff, and convert confinement into networking, but he can also discover that men like Joker refuse to become employees. That uncertainty makes every alliance unstable. Continuity matters here. Roman Sionis is the original Black Mask. Jeremiah Arkham later becomes another Black Mask after his own collapse, and the two identities should not be merged. Newer stories have also given Roman's mask supernatural abilities that influence minds, greatly increasing his threat beyond conventional mob power. Whatever version enters Arkham, the question is the same. Did the institution remove his organization, or did it place dozens of potential recruits in the room with him? Professor Pig. Professor Pig calls his work perfection. His victims experience surgery without consent, identities stripped away, and masks fused to faces that no longer feel like their own. Laszlo Valentin was connected to the global criminal organization Spiral before becoming Professor Pig. He speaks in fractured performances, wears a pig mask, and creates Dolatrons, people chemically and surgically altered into obedient servants. He is physically dangerous, but the scale of his crimes comes from turning victims into products. In Batman and Robin, Pig's operations reveal laboratories filled with people he has fixed. His definition of imperfection can include appearance, behavior, or simple resistance. Once he decides someone needs correction, their wishes become irrelevant. Arkham is an especially disturbing destination for him because it already possesses medical authority. Pig steals the language of treatment and twists it into domination. Surgical rooms, medication, and clinical uniforms become props in his fantasy that mutilation is care. The New 52 places him among the villains seen when Batman investigates Arkham, and Arkham War shows how easily institutional collapse can return specialized criminals to the city. Games and animation have expanded his methods differently, so their exact events should not be treated as one history. The central idea remains consistent. Pig does not want patients to recover. He wants them to become quiet enough that nobody can object to what he made. Cornelius Stirk. Cornelius Stirk survives by making people see what he wants them to see. His metahuman ability alters perception, allowing him to appear as someone a victim trusts. He combines that advantage with a belief that consuming human hearts can preserve his health and power. The result is a predator who approaches behind a familiar face. Stirk is physically imposing, but deception creates the opening. A guard who would never approach his real form may see a colleague. A frightened civilian may see a loved one. By the time the image breaks, he is already close enough to attack. During nightfall, Stirk is one of the inmates released from Arkham. He abducts Commissioner Gordon and attempts to remove his heart, forcing Batman into another rescue while Bane's larger strategy grinds him down. Stirk does not have to defeat Batman directly. He contributes to the exhaustion that allows someone else to do it. Inside Arkham, identification procedures become unreliable around him. Cameras, code words, and multiple observers can reduce the risk, but a hospital still depends on staff approaching patients. Stirk turns that routine contact into a hunting method. The asylum keeps trying to put one face beside one name. Cornelius can make the face lie. Abattoir. Arnold Etchison calls himself Abattoir, and the name tells you exactly how he views his family. Etchison believes his relatives are evil and that killing them allows him to absorb their life force. There is no reliable proof that the murders grant him supernatural power. The belief is enough to produce a family-wide death sentence. He becomes especially important during Jean-Paul Valley's time as Batman. After escaping Arkham, Abattoir kidnaps a relative and hides him in a death trap. Jean-Paul defeats Etchison and allows him to fall to his death instead of saving him. For a moment, the harsher Batman appears to have permanently stopped a murderer. Then, Bruce Wayne discovers the cost. Abattoir was the only person who knew where the hostage was being held, and his death leaves the victim to die. That consequence exposes why Arkham stories cannot be reduced to whether an inmate deserves sympathy. Etchison is cruel, delusional, and lethal. Saving him still mattered because information died with him, and Batman's refusal to execute criminals is also a refusal to pretend he knows every consequence. Abattoir's threat is smaller than a citywide plague or a mass breakout. His chapter leaves one of the institution's hardest questions behind. What does Gotham lose when punishment becomes more important than containment? Amygdala. Aaron Helsinger is enormous, powerful, and capable of explosive violence. He is also one of the clearest examples of an Arkham patient being used by people who understand his condition better than he does. Helsinger underwent experimental surgery, intended to control murderous rage by altering his amygdala. The operation failed. His emotional regulation became unstable, and sudden stress could push him into attacks he did not fully understand. In Nightfall, his strength makes him a serious obstacle during the Arkham breakout. Later stories show a more complicated man who can be calm, childlike, and cooperative when properly medicated. Other inmates provoke him, direct him, or withhold what he needs because they know his body can become their weapon. That distinction matters. Amygdala can overpower guards and challenge Batman, but he is not always planning the violence around him. Arkham's responsibility is to protect other people from Aaron, and protect Aaron from predators inside the institution. When the asylum fails, the public sees a giant smashing through a wall. It rarely sees the person who pointed him at it. Great White Shark. Warren White entered court as a financial criminal who believed money could purchase a safer sentence. He pleaded insanity to avoid prison and was sent to Arkham instead. That decision destroyed the man who made it. In Arkham Asylum, living hell, Warren arrives convinced that the other patients are beneath him. He has stolen retirement savings and ruined lives, yet he views himself as too civilized for the institution. The inmates respond by showing him exactly how little his old status means. Joker cuts gill-like scars into his neck. Abuse strips away his confidence, and an encounter in Mr. Freeze's refrigerated cell leaves him horribly frostbitten. Warren loses his hair, nose, lips, and much of his recognizable appearance. By the time he emerges as the Great White Shark, the nickname has become physical. The transformation reaches far beyond his appearance. Warren studies Arkham's economy, learns which guards can be bought, and begins moving information between inmates and the outside world. He becomes an underworld broker who can operate from a cell, using intelligence and financial skill more effectively than he ever used a weapon. He lied about being unwell to enter Arkham. The institution then brutalized him, reshaped him, and taught him to become a more capable criminal. If Arkham is supposed to rehabilitate people, Warren White is its most humiliating receipt. Humpty Dumpty, Humphrey Dumpler wants to fix broken things. The problem is that his idea of repair includes taking them apart to discover how they work. Humpty is a large, socially isolated man with extraordinary mechanical ability. He disassembles clocks, machinery, and eventually living beings, then tries to reassemble them. When he decides that his abusive grandmother is broken, his attempt to fix her becomes murder. Living Hell places him inside Arkham's strange social ecosystem. Humpty befriends Warren White and offers moments of genuine kindness, even while the nature of his crimes remains deeply unsettling. He can understand the components of an object with remarkable precision and still fail to understand the human boundary he crossed. Arkham treats him as both patient and useful labor. His mechanical talent can restore damaged equipment, which also means he understands locks, vents, and infrastructure better than many staff members. Giving him access is dangerous. Denying it removes one of the few activities that keeps him stable. Humpty is not frightening because he enjoys cruelty. He is frightening because he can approach irreversible harm with the concentration of someone repairing a clock, and when he finishes, he may genuinely expect to be thanked. Jane Doe. Nobody knows Jane Doe's original face because she builds herself from other people's lives. Jane studies a victim's habits, voice, relationships, and private history. She kills them, removes their skin, and assumes the identity so completely that even people close to the victim can be deceived. This is more than disguise. Jane abandons herself to become the person she has selected. Living Hell uses her as one of Arkham's most disturbing internal threats. A secure institution relies on names, photographs, fingerprints, and staff familiarity. Jane attacks the entire concept. If she can replace a doctor or guard, every locked door becomes accessible. If she replaces an inmate, the wrong person may be declared dead or discharged. Her crimes also make investigation emotionally brutal. Batman must find a murderer and then tell a family that the person who returned home carrying familiar memories may be wearing someone they loved. Arkham can isolate Jane and restrict contact, but treatment requires some version of personal identity to restore. What happens when a patient has spent years erasing that identity on purpose? The asylum can catalog the faces she stole. The one face it cannot place in the file is hers, Death Rattle. Erasmus Rain, known as Death Rattle, belongs to the occult underside of Arkham exposed in Living Hell. Rain presents himself as more than a conventional criminal. He is associated with ritual murder, demonic forces, and the supernatural corruption moving beneath the institution. In a building already full of people making impossible claims, staff can easily dismiss the warning as another performance. That dismissal becomes dangerous when the impossible begins answering back. Death Rattle matters less as a recurring Gotham celebrity than as proof that Arkham's categories are incomplete. A doctor can evaluate delusion and a guard can confiscate a blade, yet neither procedure is designed for a ritual that may actually open the building to something beyond human violence. Living Hell deliberately blurs criminal psychology with literal damnation. Rain stands on that boundary, where believing him may sound irrational and ignoring him may get everyone killed. Doodlebug. Daedalus Bach is called Doodlebug because his drawings are tied to the killings and occult patterns surrounding him. He appears in Living Hell among Arkham's lesser-known inmates, and that limited history should not be inflated into powers the comics never clearly give him. What matters is the function he serves inside the story. His compulsive images seem like meaningless marks until they begin fitting a wider supernatural design. Arkham produces mountains of patient art, notes, and repeated symbols. Most of it is treated as expression or evidence of distress. Doodlebug creates the fear that one ignored page may be a map, a warning, or part of a ritual already underway. Batman usually solves deliberate riddles because the author wants him to understand. Doodlebug's work is harder to classify. Is he communicating, predicting, or simply recording something acting through him? The asylum cannot answer quickly enough, and in Arkham, delayed understanding is often the same thing as permission. Junkyard Dog. Tucker Long, better known as Junkyard Dog, is one of the inmates who helps reveal Arkham's internal criminal hierarchy in Living Hell. He is not a world-ending metahuman or a famous mastermind. He is dangerous because institutions are shaped by ordinary enforcers as much as spectacular villains. Junkyard Dog can intimidate weaker patients, attach himself to stronger figures, and make daily confinement unbearable without ever appearing on Gotham's skyline. Characters like him expose the gap between a cell being secure and a patient being safe. Arkham may prevent Tucker from reaching the street while still allowing him to control food, favors, and fear inside the ward. Batman can end a riot with one dramatic intervention. The quieter violence returns after he leaves, unless the institution changes the conditions that reward it. Lunkhead. Lunkhead is built like the answer to a physical problem. Inside Arkham, stronger inmates and smarter criminals use him as one. He appears in Living Hell as part of the asylum's brutal population, relying on size and force rather than elaborate plans. His limited publication history does not support turning him into a secret mastermind, and he does not need that exaggeration. A locked institution already gives a violent strongman narrow corridors, crowded rooms, and victims with nowhere to retreat. Lunkhead represents the inmates who become dangerous through proximity. He may never threaten all of Gotham, but he can control the next 5 meters of a ward until someone stronger arrives. Arkham's famous monsters dominate the headlines. Men like Lunkhead determine whether anyone survives the ordinary night between them. Magpie. Margaret Pye spent her working life surrounded by beautiful objects she could catalog but never possess. Eventually, looking was no longer enough. As Magpie, she steals jewelry, museum pieces, and anything that catches her eye. She often leaves an imitation behind, and those replacements can contain traps that injure whoever discovers the theft. The sparkling prize attracts attention while the copy delivers the punishment. Her first major encounter with Batman and Superman begins when she steals from a museum where she once worked. That contrast defines her. Margaret understands value professionally, but her obsession turns value into possession. If she cannot own something beautiful, nobody should enjoy it safely. Arkham has held Magpie repeatedly, placing a relatively small-scale thief beside mass murderers and metahumans. That does not make her harmless. During a breakout, the famous inmates draw every available hero while Margaret disappears into Gotham's galleries, penthouses, and collections. Her compulsion also turns Arkham itself into temptation. Shining keys, medical instruments, and personal effects wait within reach. A tiny stolen object may look insignificant until staff learn what she planted in its place. Adaptations have given Magpie different endings and altered versions of her fixation. In the comics, she remains a perfect example of an inmate who rarely controls the asylum and still makes every inventory unreliable. Killer Moth. Batman protects ordinary people from criminals. Killer Moth's original business plan was to protect criminals from Batman. The best-known version is Drury Walker, although he has also operated under the false identity Cameron Van Cleer. He creates a moth signal, builds colorful equipment, and offers Gotham's underworld a rescue service. When police summon Batman, a paying criminal can summon him. It is an audacious idea undermined by Drury's execution. Batman inspires fear before he arrives. Killer Moth often inspires laughter after he does. His costume, gadgets, and desperate need for respect make him look like a discount reflection of the hero he wants to oppose. That embarrassment can make him more dangerous. Drury escalates because each failure confirms that nobody takes him seriously. Some continuities transform him into the monstrous Caraxes, adding wings, claws, and superhuman strength. That creature and the conventional Killer Moth should not be treated as one stable form across every era. Arkham becomes another audience he wants to impress. He can join breakouts, provide equipment, and attach himself to stronger villains, yet his alliances rarely grant the status he expects. Even criminals know the difference between someone who created a symbol and someone wearing one in the hope that fear will follow. Killer Moth wants to be Batman's opposite. His tragedy is that becoming obsessed with Batman makes him another person living in the Bat's shadow, Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange is one of Batman's earliest recurring enemies, and one of the first to discover that Bruce Wayne is beneath the cowl. He does not reach that answer through luck. He studies Batman as if the hero were his most important patient. Strange is a psychiatrist, scientist, and criminal mastermind whose intelligence allows him to move through Arkham in several roles. He has examined inmates, manipulated institutions, created monstrous test subjects, and become a patient himself. Every position gives him a different kind of access. In Strange Apparitions, he learns Batman's identity by analyzing Bruce Wayne and capturing him. He then tries to auction the secret to Gotham's criminals, while secretly wanting to replace Bruce. That last part exposes the weakness beneath his clinical confidence. Hugo's interest is not detached. He is obsessed with proving that he understands Batman so completely that he deserves to become him. When a man like Strange works inside an asylum, a medical file can become a weapon. He can frame resistance as illness, use treatment to obtain secrets, and present coercion as professional judgment. Patients are expected to disclose their fears to someone who may be collecting vulnerabilities for a criminal plan. When he becomes the patient, the advantage changes shape. Arkham staff may underestimate him because he speaks their language. He knows what behavior looks cooperative, what diagnosis creates freedom, and how institutional authority protects itself from criticism. The Arkham City game makes Strange the public director of a vast prison project backed by Ra's al Ghul. That is a separate continuity, although it uses the same core insight. Hugo is most dangerous when the system gives him a badge. Joker wants Batman's attention. Strange wants Batman's identity, psychology, and place in the world. Arkham cannot decide whether he belongs behind the desk or behind the glass, and Hugo has exploited both. Anarchy. Lonnie Machine enters Gotham's criminal record as a teenage prodigy attacking institutions he considers corrupt. He calls himself Anarchy, and unlike many Arkham inmates, his central belief is coherent enough to become politically uncomfortable. Lonnie opposes authoritarian control, economic exploitation, and systems that protect powerful people. He uses advanced technology, hacking, and carefully staged attacks to expose those systems. His intelligence can challenge Batman's, but his willingness to force change through violence places civilians inside arguments they never agreed to join. That creates a difficult question whenever he is committed. Is Arkham treating a mental disorder, or is Gotham using a psychiatric institution to remove a radical whose ideas threaten the city? Lonnie can be dangerous without every criticism he makes being false. Batman often understands more of his anger than he admits. Both men distrust corrupt authority, hide behind symbols, and believe individual action can correct a broken city. Their conflict comes from limits. Batman tries to protect people while changing the system. Anarchy can become so certain of the desired outcome that other people become pieces in the demonstration. Continuity has changed Lonnie's family history and occasionally complicated who carries the name. The stable point is his mind. Arkham can seize his equipment, but it cannot dismiss him as confused and expect the argument to disappear. Some inmates want the door opened. Anarchy wants to know who had the right to build the door in the first place. Lockup. Lyle Bolton believes criminals suffer because institutions are too weak. Give him authority and he promises nobody will escape again. Bolton works as a security specialist and prison official in stories that connect him to Gotham's detention system, including Arkham. His methods are brutal, humiliating, and deliberately excessive. Restraint becomes punishment. Compliance is never enough because he wants inmates to feel powerless. After losing legitimate authority, he becomes Lockup and creates private prisons where he kidnaps people he considers responsible for Gotham's decline. Some targets are criminals, others are officials or civilians who fail his personal standard. There is no hearing and no release process, because Lyle appoints himself guard, judge, and sentence. The animated series introduced the concept, while the comics later developed their own version. The details differ, but the reversal is the same. A man hired to secure institutions becomes so addicted to control that he must be confined inside one. Arkham often invites harsher security after a breakout. Lockup is the warning attached to that demand. A perfectly sealed asylum can still be evil if the person holding the key believes cruelty is treatment. When Bolton finally occupies a cell, he does not see the irony. He sees proof that Gotham has sided with the inmates. Film freak. Burt Weston experiences crime through cinema. He quotes films, builds attacks around familiar scenes, and treats the people around him as actors who have wandered into his production. Film Freak is released during the Nightfall period and quickly targets Robin. His knowledge of movies gives his crimes a recognizable style, but it also makes him predictable. He wants the scene to work more than he wants to leave safely. Then, he encounters Bane. Bane has released Arkham's population for a strategic purpose. Exhaust Batman, study the response, and remove anyone who interferes. Film Freak's theatrical ambushes mean nothing to him. Bane defeats and kills Weston, revealing that the breakout is a battlefield selected by someone more disciplined than the people he released. Arkham encouraged Film Freak to imagine himself as part of Batman's great gallery. Bane ends that fantasy with brutal efficiency. In Gotham, knowing every movie ending does not mean you survive your own. Cavalier. Mortimer Drake commits crimes with antique weapons, elaborate manners, and the image of a romantic swordsman. His version of Gotham is a stage where a gentleman thief can duel Batman beneath a spotlight. As the Cavalier, Drake uses swords, trick weapons, and acrobatics. He is skilled enough to be dangerous, yet his devotion to style creates openings. An efficient escape becomes less satisfying if nobody sees the flourish. He is among the criminals active during the Nightfall chaos. One more specialized threat pulling Batman across a city Bane has deliberately overloaded. Cavalier does not need to break Bruce's back himself. He only needs to demand another chase, another fight, and another hour without sleep. Several characters have used similar identities, so Mortimer's history should remain separate from later Cavaliers. His place in Arkham is simple. The institution locks away a man who believes every confinement is merely the opening scene of his next adventure. Crazy Quilt. Paul Decker built a criminal organization around coded paintings. After being blinded by a gunshot, an experimental procedure restored his sight in a distorted form, flooding his world with overwhelming color. As Crazy Quilt, he weaponizes light through a helmet that can project intense beams, hypnotic patterns, and color-based signals. His equipment turns vision into an attack, while his damaged perception feeds an obsession with controlling what everyone else sees. He is sometimes played as a lighter villain, especially beside Arkham's killers. That tone does not make a beam capable of blinding someone harmless. In a ward filled with fluorescent lights, cameras, and reflective surfaces, even damaged equipment can produce chaos. Different eras adjust the exact cause of his blindness and the functions of his helmet. The consistent image is a man whose world became an unbearable explosion of color, then decided everyone else should experience it too. Arkham removes the helmet, and Crazy Quilt continues planning the pattern. Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Dumfrey and Deavertweed resemble the characters from Through the Looking Glass, and they build their criminal identities around that resemblance. The Tweeds are cousins, often presented as physically powerful partners who organize gangs and use Wonderland imagery. Their names invite people to treat them as duplicates. They are individuals, but they work best when a victim cannot tell which one planned the trap and which one is about to close it. Their association with the Mad Hatter deepens Arkham's strange relationship with Lewis Carroll. Jervis Tetch supplies obsession and mind control. The Tweeds supply numbers, force, and obedient followers. Together, they can transform fantasy into an organized operation. Arkham must separate partners whose criminal identity depends on reunion. That sounds straightforward until one impersonates the other, recruits replacements, or persuades staff that the pair are harmless comic relief. Gotham has enough Wonderland criminals to fill a tea party. Dumfrey and Deaver are the ones most likely to bring an entire gang. Ratcatcher. Otis Flanagan once worked for Gotham as a professional rat catcher. After turning to crime, he discovered that the creatures living beneath the city could become an army. Ratcatcher uses whistles, chemicals, and specialized knowledge to command rats in open streets that can overwhelm a victim through sheer numbers. Inside Arkham, it is far worse. The asylum contains vents, maintenance tunnels, food stores, and gaps too small for a guard to inspect. Rats can carry messages, steal keys, damage wiring, and attack patients without opening a single cell. Every crack becomes part of Otis's reach. His resentment toward the officials who imprisoned him often shapes his crimes. He knows how cities hide undesirable things underground because Gotham once paid him to manage exactly that problem. When the city discards him, he returns with everything it wanted kept out of sight. Arkham's thick walls offer little protection. Rats do not recognize the front gate, and Otis knows routes the architects forgot. The character should not be confused with Cleo Cazzo, Ratcatcher 2 from the Suicide Squad film. Otis is the comic inmate whose power becomes most frightening when you remember that an asylum is also a building full of holes. Kite Man. Charles Brown commits crimes with weaponized kites, gliders, and the unwavering belief that this can become a respected criminal identity. Yes, really. For decades, Kite Man was a joke Batman could remove from the sky with one well-aimed batarang. Later comics gave the joke a wound. Charles loses his son during a conflict involving the Joker and Riddler, then clings to the identity everyone mocks because abandoning it would mean admitting how completely Gotham broke him. His equipment can still be dangerous. Aerial explosives and silent gliders create real tactical problems, especially during a larger breakout. What he lacks is the control that villains like Bane possess. Arkham records him beside monsters who can rewrite minds, and the contrast is almost absurd. That is part of the character. Gotham can turn grief into a clown, a king, a bat, or a man hanging beneath a giant kite. His catchphrase is, "Kite Man, hell yeah." Arkham may be the only place where that introduction barely cracks the top 50 strangest things heard before breakfast. Cluemaster. Arthur Brown began as a criminal who left clues to his crimes, making comparison with the Riddler unavoidable. Then he had a surprisingly sensible thought. What if he stopped leaving them? As Cluemaster, Arthur uses puzzles, traps, and themed equipment, but he lacks Edward Nygma's absolute need to prove intellectual superiority through solvable riddles. Removing that compulsion allows him to become less theatrical and, at times, more dangerous. His greatest importance reaches beyond his own costume. Arthur is the father of Stephanie Brown, who becomes spoiler specifically to ruin his plans before later serving as Robin and Batgirl. His criminal life gives Gotham another hero, largely because his daughter refuses to become him. Cluemaster has been confined in Arkham in some eras, although he is not one of its most permanent residents. His presence challenges Batman's habits. A wall covered in riddles usually points toward Enigma. Arthur can exploit that expectation, using the familiar structure while withholding the answer Batman expects to find. The Riddler needs Batman to appreciate the game. Cluemaster can decide that winning matters more than applause. The answer. Mike Patton calls himself The Answer, a name designed to sound impressive before anyone has finished asking the question. He is a minor Gotham criminal associated with question and answer-themed crimes and an appearance among Arkham's population. The record does not support inventing a vast origin or secret meta-human ability for him. His importance here is documentary. Arkham contains more than the villains whose names appear on posters. Its files include failed identities, one-time offenders, and men who believed a clever title would make Batman remember them. The Answer got into the asylum, while remaining important was a different question. The Architect, Zachary Gate, the Architect, attacks Gotham through the history buried inside its buildings. His grievance is connected to the Gate family and the exploitation surrounding Gotham's construction. Rather than simply rob a landmark, he uses architecture as evidence and weapon, targeting structures that represent old crimes the modern city prefers to forget. That makes an Arkham connection unusually fitting. The asylum is a monument to inherited damage, repeatedly rebuilt without escaping its foundation. A criminal who studies blueprints, load-bearing weaknesses, and civic history does not need super strength to threaten it. The Architect is not a core resident on the level of Joker or Two-Face, and his confirmed appearances should remain proportionate. His concept still exposes a terrifying possibility. The safest cell in Gotham is useless if someone knows which century-old wall is carrying its weight. The Charlatan. Paul Sloan began as an actor hired to portray Two-Face, then became tangled in false identities and criminal manipulation around the role. Under the name The Charlatan, Sloan represents a recurring Gotham problem. Performance can become identity if everyone responds to the mask long enough. His connection to Arkham belongs to that history of impersonation and psychological collapse, though he should not be casually merged with Harvey Dent. For staff, a convincing imitation creates immediate danger. Treatment records, enemy lists, and security rules built for one man may be applied to another. The costume can be removed in seconds. The role may take far longer. Signalman. Phil Cobb wanted to be noticed by Gotham's criminal elite. After being rejected, he built an identity around the signals and symbols that direct people's attention. As Signalman, he uses signal-themed weapons and creates crimes large enough for the city to see. Batman Confidential includes him among villains connected to Arkham, but he is not a defining long-term patient. His motive suits the building anyway. Arkham is full of people competing to be the name Batman responds to first. Cobb makes that competition literal. If Gotham will not recognize him, he will light the sky until it has no choice. The Bat Signal asks for help. Signalman's version demands an audience. Tallyman. The Tallyman treats murder as debt collection. In his worldview, someone always owes, and he has appointed himself to settle the account. At least 2 characters have used the name. The original is a killer shaped by childhood poverty and tragedy. A later Tallyman appears in Gotham's underworld and has a documented connection to Arkham. Combining every detail into one biography would create a character neither story actually contains. The shared motif is punishment reduced to arithmetic. Names become marks, debts become sentences, and compassion becomes an error in the total. As a contract killer, the later Tallyman can be directed by people whose hands remain clean. Arkham records the violence. It cannot erase the idea that every injury must be repaid with another. Flamingo. Eduardo Flamingo arrives dressed in bright pink, riding a motorcycle and looking almost playful. Then the assassin starts cutting into people. Flamingo is a ruthless killer associated with the criminal network confronted during Batman and Robin. Stories give him a cannibalistic reputation, adding an especially ugly edge to the immaculate appearance. He fights with guns, blades, and frightening speed, smiling through violence that would make less colorful criminals look away. His presence in Arkham records is smaller than the institution's famous residents, so there is no reason to pretend he controlled the asylum for years. What he provides is contrast. Gotham repeatedly teaches people to read visual darkness as danger. Flamingo hides brutality in color. He closes the human-scale files because the next cells create a completely different problem. What happens when Arkham's patient can attack you in a dream, irradiate the doctor, or alter reality from behind a locked door? Dr. Destiny. John Dee can be strapped to a bed, separated from every weapon and watched by armed guards. None of that protects anyone who falls asleep. Dee begins as a scientist who creates the Materiopticon, a device capable of turning dreams into reality. His early battles with the Justice League leave him defeated, physically withered and confined in Arkham. Over time, his connection to the Dreamstone and the realm of dreams becomes more dangerous than the machine itself. The asylum believes it has contained a frail man. What it actually holds is someone who can enter the most private space every patient carries with them. The Sandman story 24 Hours demonstrates the scale. After recovering the ruby that amplifies his abilities, Dee enters a diner and manipulates the people inside for an entire day. He changes what they feel, believe, and desire. Friendships become suspicion, affection becomes violence, and ordinary people are pushed into mutilating and killing one another while he watches. There is no conventional fight because the victims cannot trust their own minds. Dee does not need to overpower them. He edits the emotional rules under which they act. Now place that power inside Arkham. Hundreds of frightened people sleep within meters of one another. Their dreams contain Joker, Batman, childhood trauma, revenge, and escape. If Dee regains control, every nightmare can become a corridor he walks through. A locked cell may even help him by convincing staff that his body remains exactly where they left it. Batman usually relies on preparation, but sleep is not optional forever. The longer the crisis continues, the weaker every guard and hero becomes, while Dr. Destiny's territory only expands. His powers fluctuate between stories, and television adaptations create their own versions. The comic threat needs no exaggeration. Dee has challenged the Justice League and damaged lives without lifting his weakened body from a chair. Arkham was built to contain actions. Dr. Destiny can begin the attack before a person has decided to move. Dr. Phosphorus. Dr. Alexander Sartorius survives an accident that should have killed him. What returns is a man whose body burns with radioactive energy. The exact origin changes across continuities, but the defining transformation remains. Exposure connected to a nuclear reactor turns Sartorius's skin transparent and incandescent. He emits heat, radiation, and toxic energy, allowing him to burn through obstacles and poison people simply by remaining close. His earliest conflict with Batman targets Gotham itself. Sartorius wants revenge against the officials he blames for his condition, and his body makes every confrontation hazardous. Batman cannot grab him barehanded. Police cannot place ordinary cuffs around wrists hot enough to sear flesh. Arkham confinement creates an absurd medical contradiction. A patient needs examination, food, and treatment, yet approaching him can injure the staff. A containment suit protects the worker until the material fails. A sealed room protects the ward until heat damages the room. Sedation requires delivering a substance through a body that no longer behaves like ordinary tissue. The New 52 revises elements of his history, and his power level shifts with the story. He is not invincible. Specialized shielding, cooling systems, and Batman's planning can stop him. The danger lies in what happens when one ordinary procedure goes wrong. If Dr. Phosphorus has a medical emergency, who enters first? Arkham's answer has often been whichever employee received the least complete warning. Dr. Double X. Dr. Simon X wanted to separate the human aura from the body. His experiment succeeded, producing an energy duplicate with the strength and freedom Simon believed his physical form lacked. The duplicate calls itself Double X. It can fly, project energy, and act independently, while remaining connected to X. In some stories, Simon presents the energy being as the corrupt half, leading him into crime. Batman has good reason to doubt that convenient division of responsibility. Arkham faces a practical problem before it reaches the philosophical one. Which half is the inmate? Lock Simon in a cell, and Double X may pass beyond the barriers designed for flesh, restrain the energy form, and the human scientist may recreate the conditions that released it. Separating them can weaken the pair, but the entire institution must recognize that one patient occupies two operational bodies. The concept also gives X an excuse every time violence occurs. He can blame the double, while the double expresses impulses Simon refuses to claim. Whether that is genuine independence or elaborate denial, victims experience the same attack. Dr. Double X is a limited Batman rogue, not an unstoppable cosmic entity. Batman has repeatedly disrupted the connection and defeated both forms. Arkham still has to maintain a cell for a man whose accomplice can emerge from his own energy field. Most inmates need another person to help them escape. Simon brings his partner inside, Professor Milo. Professor Achilles. Milo turns chemistry into a delivery system for monsters. Milo is a scientist specializing in drugs, toxins, and compounds that alter behavior or physiology. He has exposed Batman to chemicals that produce irrational fear, created transformations in other people, and used animals as the basis for grotesque experiments. He rarely needs to be the strongest person in the room because he can change who is. In one famous storyline, Milo's treatment causes Anthony Lupus to become a werewolf-like creature. Other schemes manipulate perception and emotion, forcing Batman to solve a chemical attack while his own senses argue against him. Inside Arkham, one vial can reach a population already selected for volatility. A sedative can become a stimulant, and cleaning chemicals can become ingredients. An inmate receiving routine medication may wake with strength nobody designed the ward to contain. That makes Milo more dangerous than his physical record suggests. A guard can search him and confiscate obvious laboratory equipment. The institution still contains pharmacies, medical waste, maintenance supplies, and staff trained to assume that labeled chemicals are what they claim to be. Animated stories have used Milo extensively, sometimes with plots separate from the comics. The common mechanism is enough. He changes people, then lets their transformed bodies commit the visible crime. Arkham can lock away the professor. It has a much harder time proving he did not alter something before the door closed. Man-Bat. Dr. Kirk Langstrom never intended to become one of Gotham's monsters. He wanted to overcome human deafness by extracting the biological advantages of bats. His serum works too well. Kirk gains enhanced hearing and other bat-like abilities, then transforms into a huge winged creature driven by instinct, confusion, and rage. Depending on the story, Man-Bat can fly, tear through reinforced barriers, and emit a scream powerful enough to disable anyone nearby. The tragedy is that Kirk often returns to human form with an understanding of the damage. He is a scientist, husband, and father whose research repeatedly threatens Francine Langstrom and their children. Francine has also transformed into a man-bat, which means staff cannot assume every winged creature is Kirk. There are periods when Langstrom controls his form, helps heroes, or sincerely pursues a cure. There are others when obsession drives him back to the serum even after he knows the risk. That shifting responsibility makes him difficult to classify. Is Arkham restraining a criminal, treating an addiction to transformation, or quarantining a medical catastrophe? The institution can place human Kirk in a standard room. If the change begins, his mass increases. Claws emerge and wings require space the room was never built to hold. Sedatives calculated for the scientist may be useless against the creature. Sonic systems might repel Man-Bat while injuring every nearby patient. Batman has an unusual connection to him. Bruce deliberately turned fear of bats into disciplined symbolism. Kirk tried to copy the animal's biology and lost the human discipline controlling it. Every cure creates hope, which makes the next transformation more painful. Man-Bat is not Arkham's proof that monsters cannot change. He is proof that change can happen, fail, and happen again. Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy was born on a Monday, at least according to the nursery rhyme that became his name. The man he once was, Cyrus Gold, died long before the enormous corpse began walking through Slaughter Swamp. Grundy is undead. He possesses immense strength, extraordinary durability, and the ability to return after apparent death. Each resurrection can alter his intelligence and personality. One Grundy may speak in broken fragments and lash out like a frightened child. Another may remember more, plan carefully, and challenge some of DC's strongest heroes. That variability defeats ordinary treatment. A clinical plan written for the confused patient who entered on Tuesday may be useless when a more intelligent version wakes on Friday. His body may resist medication entirely, and his death does not provide the finality institutions usually assume. Grundy has been held in Arkham intermittently, although he also belongs to wider stories involving Green Lantern, the Justice Society, and supernatural Gotham. Calling him a permanent resident would oversimplify a character who can disappear into the swamp and return in a different state. Whenever Arkham does contain him, the walls are temporary by definition. If he breaks them, Batman has to stop a creature capable of throwing cars. If he dies inside them, staff cannot be sure the problem ended. They may only have reset it. Some versions of Grundy are capable of friendship and deserve protection from people who exploit their confusion. Others are calculating killers. The name does not tell Batman which one has risen this time. Arkham wants every admission to move toward discharge or permanent containment. Solomon Grundy follows another schedule: born, buried, returned. Floronic Man. Jason Woodrue begins as a scientist fascinated by plant life, and ends as something that no longer sees humanity from a fully human perspective. Known as the Floronic Man, Woodrue transforms his body into living plant matter and connects with the green, the elemental network linking vegetation across the planet. He can control plants, generate growth, and survive damage that would kill an ordinary person. At his highest levels, a prison garden is not decoration. It is infrastructure he can command. Woodrue plays a decisive role in Swamp Thing's history by discovering that Alec Holland is a plant intelligence carrying the dead man's memories, rather than a man whose body physically transformed. That revelation demonstrates Jason's brilliance. What he does afterward demonstrates why brilliance is not safety. He attempts to abandon humanity and embrace plant supremacy, treating animals and people as an infestation. Poison Ivy may defend the environment through increasingly violent means, but Woodrue often moves further into alien detachment. They can overlap without being interchangeable. In A Serious House on Serious Earth, he appears inside Arkham as a diminished, uncanny presence speaking about nature and identity. That graphic novel uses dream logic and symbolism, so every image should not be read as a literal medical record. The placement still works. Arkham contains a man whose body challenges the boundary between patient, organism, and ecosystem. Cutting him away from soil may weaken him, while doing so also becomes a form of prolonged deprivation. Allowing plant material into the cell gives him tools. Herbicide can injure the patient and contaminate everyone around him. Then there is the largest problem. Gotham treats Arkham as a structure separated from the natural world, even though roots pass under walls and spores travel through air. Woodrue does not need the front gate if the building is standing on something alive. Psycho Pirate Roger Hayden can make a room feel anything he chooses. Joy, terror, rage, and despair become controls on the Medusa mask he wears. As Psycho Pirate, Hayden manipulates emotion directly. He can turn allies against one another, immobilize victims with fear, or create devotion where none existed. The mask amplifies his abilities, but his connection to emotion has survived changes in continuity and made him useful to villains operating on a multiversal scale. His strangest burden comes from Crisis on Infinite Earths. During that event, the original multiverse is destroyed, and its surviving worlds are combined into one history. Almost everyone forgets the realities that no longer exist. Psycho Pirate remembers. He recalls heroes, families, and entire Earths that the rebuilt universe insists never existed. After the crisis, he is shown in an institution ranting about vanished worlds. To doctors, the claims sound impossible. To the reader, he may be the only patient accurately describing what happened. That makes his confinement one of Arkham's sharpest ideas. The man classified as delusional possesses knowledge reality itself erased. How could any evaluation distinguish a false memory from a true memory belonging to a deleted universe? Later, Batman secretly hides Psycho Pirate inside Arkham. Bruce needs him to help stabilize Claire Clover, also known as Gotham Girl, whose powers carry severe psychological and physical consequences. Batman believes the institution can conceal Roger from the outside world. Bane proves otherwise. During City of Bane, Bane attacks Arkham to retrieve him. Psycho Pirate's ability is valuable because controlling emotion can help control powerful people. The asylum becomes a vault, and the inmate is the weapon everyone wants to steal from it. If Hayden reaches the general population, he does not need to open cells. He can amplify every grievance until the ward erupts. Guards may experience loyalty to the patient they should restrain. Doctors may feel absolute confidence in a catastrophic decision. Batman may know his emotion is being manipulated and still have to act while feeling it. Psycho Pirate is proof that Arkham sometimes holds people because their truth is too large for the current world. He remembers realities nobody else can verify, and with one mask, he can make everyone in the building feel that loss. Phosphorus Rex. Phosphorus Rex breathes fire, performs with the Circus of Strange, and looks like the kind of inmate Arkham's admission form was never designed to describe. He is part of the grotesque criminal troupe associated with Professor Pig during Dick Grayson's period as Batman. Rex can project flame from his mouth, turning close combat and ordinary restraint into an immediate burn risk. His circus background also means spectacle is part of the attack. Violence is staged to shock an audience as much as defeat an opponent. His appearance among Arkham's modern population gives the institution a specialized containment problem with relatively little personal history available to guide treatment. The comics do not provide a deep origin that justifies inventing one. What they establish is enough. Rex is dangerous, theatrical, and connected to criminals who mutilate people as performance. The name invites confusion with Dr. Phosphorus, but they are completely separate villains. Alexander Sartorius emits radioactive energy across his transformed body. Phosphorus Rex is the fire-breathing circus criminal. Arkham has held both. Imagine being the administrator who has to explain that the fire ward needs two different protocols, because the men with similar names burn people in entirely different ways. Sumo. Sumo is a massive Arkham inmate whose size makes him useful whenever the asylum's population becomes an army. He appears prominently during Arkham War, when the fallout from Forever Evil leaves Gotham divided between criminal factions. Scarecrow organizes Arkham's inmates, doses them with venom, and sends them against Bane's forces. Sumo serves as heavy muscle in that conflict, relying on tremendous strength rather than a complicated personal mythology. The comics do not provide enough stable biography to pretend there is a lost epic behind him. His role is direct. Arkham can contain individual patients under controlled conditions. Once someone equips those patients, enhances them, and points them toward a war, a man like Sumo becomes a living battering ram. Bane ultimately defeats the Arkham faction and takes control. That outcome ends this part of the inmate list where its escalation began. Physical strength is frightening, but the person organizing it determines the scale. The remaining inmates are harder to classify. Some entered Arkham through manipulation, some inherited its authority, and one walked through the doors because he wanted to. Hush. Thomas Elliot grew up beside Bruce Wayne, sharing privilege without sharing Bruce's capacity for love. He resented his parents, attempted to kill them for an inheritance, and blamed Thomas Wayne when Bruce's father saved his mother's life. Elliot becomes a brilliant surgeon, then transforms that skill into the identity Hush. Bandages conceal his face while he builds elaborate revenge plots around Bruce. He recruits other villains, exploits private knowledge, and attacks the relationships that keep Batman human. Hush is often processed as a conventional criminal rather than a permanent Arkham resident, so his time in the institution must be treated as a special case. Stories place him in Arkham custody, including periods after plans involving Bruce Wayne's identity and appearance collapse. He does not belong to the asylum in the same recurring way as Joker. That can make him more dangerous during the time he is there. Thomas is a surgeon capable of altering faces with extraordinary precision. At one point, he surgically changes his own appearance to resemble Bruce Wayne. Inside Arkham, where identification controls access to medication, interviews, and release, that ability attacks the foundation of security. A guard can confiscate scalpels, but Hush does not forget anatomy. A doctor may see a fellow physician and underestimate how fluently Thomas can manipulate clinical language. Another inmate may become a source of tissue, an accomplice, or a patient in an operation nobody authorized. His obsession with Bruce also grants him knowledge many inmates lack. He understands Wayne family history, social relationships, and vulnerabilities surrounding Batman's public life. That information can be traded even when Hush has no equipment at all. What separates him from Hugo Strange is motive. Strange studies Batman because he wants to understand and replace the symbol. Elliot wants Bruce to suffer for possessing the life Thomas believes should have been his. Arkham can hide Hush behind one more door. It cannot rely on the face visible through the window, and in an institution already visited by Clayface and Jane Doe. That is a terrifyingly practical weakness. Alberto Falcone. Alberto Falcone is the overlooked son of Carmine Falcone, one of Gotham's most powerful crime bosses. His family builds influence through money, loyalty, and murder. Alberto wants something the family name does not automatically give him: significance. In The Long Halloween, a killer known as Holiday murders members of Gotham's criminal world on significant dates. Alberto appears to become one of the victims when he is shot and falls from a yacht on New Year's Eve. He later returns alive and confesses to being Holiday. The confession offers a simple answer to a mystery that deliberately resists one. Alberto claims the murders allowed him to prove himself beyond his father's control. Evidence and later revelations complicate whether he committed every Holiday killing, acted alone, or became one participant in a larger chain of crimes. He is sent to Arkham, where the son of organized crime becomes another patient in Calendar Man's world of dates and ritual. The placement humiliates the Falcones. Their power depends on appearing disciplined and untouchable, while Alberto's identity is consumed by a murder pattern he may not fully own. Later, during Dark Victory, Alberto is released into home confinement and becomes vulnerable to manipulation. Calendar Man exploits him, and Alberto struggles with visions and guilt around his crimes. His treatment becomes entangled with another Holiday mystery, making recovery almost impossible to separate from investigation. Arkham does not receive a theatrical supervillain born from acid or alien technology. It receives a young man raised inside a criminal dynasty who chooses, accepts, or is pushed into the identity of a serial killer. That ambiguity should remain intact. Declaring one perfectly clean solution would flatten the story. Alberto matters because Gotham's most organized family produces a crime nobody can organize into a single certain truth. James Gordon Jr. James Gordon Jr. frightens his family because he rarely looks out of control. He can speak calmly, imitate concern, and make other people question whether they have imagined the danger. He is the son of Commissioner James Gordon and brother of Barbara Gordon. Even as a child, disturbing events surround him, including the disappearance of one of Barbara's friends. As an adult, he returns to Gotham presenting himself as someone who wants reconciliation and treatment. Barbara does not believe him. In the Black Mirror, James claims medication has changed him. He speaks intelligently about his history and understands exactly what his father hopes to hear. Beneath that presentation, he is planning to release a substance intended to reduce empathy across a population, creating more people like the person he believes himself to be. His violence is targeted and personal. He manipulates Commissioner Gordon's love, attacks Barbara, and uses the family's desire for recovery as access. The threat does not come from a theatrical split personality or hallucination. It comes from a man who studies emotional responses without sharing the restraint those emotions create. James has passed through psychiatric institutions, including Arkham in his wider history, but labels are less useful here than actions. Stories describe him with clinical language that varies by continuity. The safe conclusion is factual. He deceives, harms, and kills, while demonstrating a chilling ability to plan around the people trying to assess him. Arkham relies heavily on interviews. A patient speaks, a professional evaluates the account, and the institution decides how much freedom is safe. James makes every part of that process vulnerable because he understands what the listener wants to believe. Commissioner Gordon has faced monsters without blinking. His son creates a different fear. If Jim accepts that James is dangerous, he may abandon someone who could still be helped. If he accepts the performance, he may deliver the next victim himself. Barbara's suspicion repeatedly proves justified, but being right does not protect her from the emotional cost. She is forced to watch her father hope while preparing for the moment James uses that hope against them. In Arkham, loud inmates trigger alarms. James Gordon Jr. is the patient who may convince staff to turn the alarm off. Jeremiah Arkham, Amadeus Arkham, founded the institution and became its patient. Decades later, his nephew Jeremiah repeats the family tragedy while insisting he can finally impose control. Jeremiah inherits a name tied to the asylum and becomes its director. In the last Arkham, he reopens a rebuilt facility with severe new methods. Cells are technologically advanced, discipline is immediate, and Jeremiah presents himself as the professional who will end Arkham's cycle of escapes. Batman doubts him from the beginning. Victor Zirash is supposedly confined, yet murders bearing his tally continue. To investigate, Batman adopts the identity of a criminal called John Smith and allows himself to be committed. Jeremiah now has institutional power over the man he holds partly responsible for Arkham's endless damage. He uses it. Batman is drugged, isolated, and subjected to brutal treatment, while Zirash exploits a hidden route out of his cell. Jeremiah's confidence in his system prevents him from recognizing that the system has already failed. The administrator who promises absolute security becomes another source of danger inside the building. His resentment toward Batman is understandable before it becomes destructive. Every time Bruce returns an offender to Arkham, staff inherit the risk. Every escape makes the institution look incompetent. Jeremiah lives with the violence Batman delivers to his door, and he begins treating Batman as the cause instead of one person responding to Gotham's much larger collapse. Years of exposure erode him. He is manipulated by inmates, traumatized by attacks, and consumed by the belief that Arkham can be controlled if he becomes hard enough. The work does not remain at work. The asylum becomes his identity, just as it became Amadeus's. Eventually, Jeremiah becomes a villain himself. After Roman Sionis appears to die, a new Black Mask emerges during the Battle for the Cowl era. This version is later revealed as Jeremiah Arkham. He builds a criminal following, uses masks and chemicals to control others, and crosses the boundary he once believed separated administrator from inmate. The distinction matters. Roman Sionis is the original Black Mask, shaped by Gotham wealth, family hatred, and organized crime. Jeremiah is the second, shaped by Arkham. They wear related identities for different reasons. Jeremiah's transformation is more than a surprise reveal. It is the institution completing a cycle. He begins with authority over names, diagnoses, medication, and confinement. As Black Mask, he keeps the same desire for control and removes the professional language that once disguised it. When his identity is exposed, Jeremiah is committed to the asylum he ran. Staff now have to place their former director behind one of his own doors. He knows procedures, blind spots, emergency routes, and personnel. More painfully, his confinement confirms the fear carried by the Arkham family since Amadeus. The institution does not stand outside the illness and violence it contains. It participates. Jeremiah could have chosen differently. Exposure explains a collapse without excusing torture or murder. Many Arkham employees endure trauma without becoming Black Mask. His tragedy comes from mistaking control for treatment so completely that, when control failed, domination seemed like the only remaining answer. Amadeus built Arkham after losing his family. Jeremiah tries to preserve it and loses himself. By the time he sits in a cell, the family legacy has moved from founder to institution to diagnosis. Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul has lived for centuries, commanded a global league of assassins, and repeatedly tried to reshape civilization through mass death. His strangest Arkham stay begins with paperwork. In Detective Comics, Batman brings Ra's to Gotham after a conflict involving the resurrection and transfer of his consciousness. The immortal mastermind is placed in Arkham under the identity Terry Jean Case. The alias is part of the strategy. Ra's appears to be an ordinary man suffering from a delusion that he is an ancient international terrorist. From the institution's perspective, the impossible claim supports commitment. From Batman's perspective, Arkham provides a place to contain an enemy whose true identity would trigger enormous legal and political complications. It is a clever solution with a dangerous assumption that Ra's will behave like a person trapped by the system. He understands systems too well. Ra's can manipulate doctors, summon followers, and wait through procedures that feel permanent only to people with ordinary lifespans. Even without a Lazarus pit inside the building, his centuries of experience make every interview uneven. The clinician believes an hour has been spent evaluating the patient. Ra's sees one more temporary official in a life filled with them. His commitment also exposes Batman's willingness to use Arkham pragmatically. Bruce knows Ra's is not simply Terry Jean Case experiencing a false identity. He allows the institution to record that fiction because it creates immediate containment. Does the deception protect Gotham, or does it turn psychiatric authority into a convenient prison mechanism? Batman would argue that lives are at stake. Arkham's history shows why expedient answers rarely remain clean. Ra's does not need to overpower every guard. He only needs the institution to follow its own rules until the next part of his plan is ready. Anchorus. The Anchorus exists at the center of a serious house on Sirius Earth, where Arkham behaves less like a hospital and more like a living nightmare built from memory, symbolism, and fear. She has spent an immense period confined within the asylum, withdrawing so completely into its spiritual and psychological depths that the outside world barely matters. The story does not provide a conventional villain biography with a neat first crime, power list, and arrest. Trying to invent one would miss her purpose. When Batman enters Arkham during the inmate takeover, the Anchoress confronts him with resentment. She belongs to the place in a way he never will, because Batman can enter, survive its revelations, and leave. That ability looks like freedom from Bruce's perspective. From hers, it looks like privilege. Arkham's inmates are defined by the building. Their names enter files, their bodies are searched, and every attempt to leave becomes evidence against them. Batman crosses the same corridors in a costume, uses violence, and carries obsessions of his own, yet the doors open when his work is complete. The Anchoress forces the story to ask why. Her accusation is not a clinical verdict that Batman secretly belongs in permanent treatment. A serious house operates through dream logic, religious imagery, and deliberately unreliable perception. Its power comes from refusing a clean verdict. She prepares the final inmate because she sees what the others cannot. Arkham's most important visitor has occupied its cells, fought through its halls, and built his identity around people it contains. The only difference she cannot accept is that he always gets to go home. Batman. Batman is not a permanent Arkham patient. He has never simply belonged on the official roster beside Joker, Two-Face, or Scarecrow. But Bruce Wayne has been an inmate, and the circumstances expose more about Arkham than any ordinary commitment could. In the last Arkham, Batman needs to discover how Victor Zsasz continues killing while records show him secured inside a new high-tech facility. An outside inspection will not work, because Jeremiah Arkham controls the evidence and views Batman as part of the problem. Bruce creates a false criminal identity, John Smith, and arranges to enter the institution undercover. The plan places him inside a system where being correct does not grant authority. Staff call him a patient. Jeremiah controls his medication, movement, and access to information. If Batman objects too strongly, the objection becomes proof that he is unstable. If he cooperates completely, Zsasz continues killing. Bruce expects confinement. He underestimates how easily the institution can redefine him. Jeremiah subjects him to drugs and punitive treatment while presenting each action as necessary care. Batman's physical training keeps him alive, but strength cannot overturn a record stating that the masked vigilante is another violent man refusing help. From inside, the distinction between investigation and commitment depends on facts nobody wants to hear. He eventually discovers the passage Zsasz uses, exposes the failure, and ends the operation. Batman can leave because the identity was constructed and allies know the truth. The experience still proves that Arkham's power does not begin with bars. It begins with the authority to decide whose account counts as reality. A serious house on Sirius Earth takes the question further. Arkham's inmates seize control and demand Batman in exchange for hostages. He enters voluntarily, walking into a building that seems to transform around him. Joker leads him through psychological games. Amadeus Arkham's history bleeds into the present, and every room pushes Bruce toward the possibility that the asylum recognizes him. This story is symbolic, surreal, and intentionally ambiguous. Its imagery should not be flattened into a literal report claiming every supernatural event occurred exactly as shown. The emotional challenge is unmistakable. Batman has turned childhood trauma into an identity. He dresses as the creature he once feared, patrols through the night, and repeatedly returns to violent relationships he cannot end. His enemies reflect pieces of him. Two-Face converts choice into ritual. Riddler turns intelligence into compulsion. Scarecrow weaponizes fear, and Joker treats Batman's attention as the center of existence. Does that make Batman the same as them? No, because Bruce's actions matter. He directs obsession toward saving lives, creates rules to restrain his power, and builds relationships capable of challenging him. He can recognize another person's humanity at the exact moment Gotham demands punishment. Those differences are enormous. They are also choices, which means he has to keep making them. Arkham frightens Batman because it imagines those choices failing. The building gathers people who turned pain into permission and asks how far Bruce stands from doing the same. A single night without restraint, one decision that nobody else deserves agency, could move him closer than he wants to admit. Other stories have physically trapped, drugged, or imprisoned Batman inside Arkham. Adaptations take the idea even further, especially the Arkham games, where the asylum becomes the battlefield that defines his relationship with Joker. Those versions differ in continuity, but they return to the same image: Batman standing inside a cell designed for the people he hunts. He understands Arkham more intimately than most officials. He knows which patients manipulate interviews, which cells require special containment, and which treatments villains have learned to exploit. He also contributes to the cycle. Batman captures an offender, delivers them to an institution with a catastrophic failure record, then prepares for the inevitable escape. Why keep doing it? Because the alternatives are worse. Execution would make Batman the authority deciding who can never change. Abandoning Gotham would leave civilians unprotected. Arkham, at least in principle, preserves the possibility of treatment while containing immediate danger. The institution repeatedly betrays that principle. Batman repeatedly returns because failure does not erase the value of trying to build something better. That answer separates him from many inmates without placing him above scrutiny. Bruce can become controlling, secretive, and cruel. His contingency plans have endangered friends, while his certainty has fractured the Bat family. The people closest to him often serve as the restraint he believes he provides for everyone else. Arkham removes those relationships and closes the door. Inside, Batman is forced to confront the simplest version of himself, one traumatized man in a costume, surrounded by other people whose trauma became identity. He can fight his way through them. He cannot punch the comparison until it disappears. So, is Batman Arkham's final inmate? Officially, only under special circumstances, false identities, or temporary captivity. Morally and psychologically, the stories leave the question open because answering it with total confidence would make Bruce less trustworthy. Joker would say they belong together. Jeremiah Arkham would say Batman creates the chaos he claims to contain. The Anchoress would point out that Bruce receives the one privilege denied to everyone else. He chooses when the experience ends. Batman answers through what he does after the door opens. He returns to Gotham, protects people, and tries again. He does not emerge cured because heroism is not a permanent diagnosis. It is behavior maintained under pressure. That is why Arkham remains Batman's most important building. Crime Alley explains why he began. The Batcave shows what he built, and Arkham asks what he could become if the mission consumes the person beneath it. Its most unsettling inmate was never the one who escaped fastest or destroyed the thickest wall. It was the man who could walk out whenever he wanted, return the next night by choice, and still have to wonder whether some part of him belonged inside.